Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, colleagues. Thank you for coming this unusually cold April morning. Somehow I feel responsible for this weather. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for joining this conversation about challenges in information environment. Let me start with very simple observation that every technological shift reshapes not only how we communicate, but also how we can be misled. And I remember, like, when it all started, all these discussions about disinformation, like 10, 12 years ago, and I've been in this business for so long, I remember that our conversations about disinformation were almost technical. We were talking about social media algorithms and how bad actors like Russia use them in their advantage. How the algorithms reward engagement, how they can be gamed, how visibility can be engineered. And very quickly we saw how it was implemented. I remember one of the most memorable examples is disinformation campaigns during annexation of Crimea, when Russia deployed thousands of bots and trolls account, creating this image. It was huge campaign, creating this image of average Crimean citizen which wanted to join Russia, which didn't want to be part of Ukraine. And eventually, many people thought that it was true. Back then, it felt big, but in hindsight, it was only a very early warning of what was coming. Over the years, platforms introduced more rules, more regulations, more safeguards, but one thing didn't change. Those who were spreading disinformation kept adapting. Looking for new vulnerabilities, new loopholes, changing platforms, changing tactics, and changing formats. And today we face another scale of challenge. Artificial intelligence is not just accelerating disinformation, but it's transforming it. We are no longer dealing with distorted facts and misleading narratives. We are dealing with the ability to generate content that looks coherent, that sounds authoritative, and mimics the signal of credibility that we have learned to trust. So what I would like to talk about this today, and let me introduce our distinguished speakers. Roman Goncharenko, Eastern European editor at Deutsche Welle. Andriy Kovalenko, head of the Center for Counter Disinformation, National Security and Defense Council. Ihor Rozkladai, Deputy Director, Center for Democracy and Rule of Law, and Adam Rutland, Chief Executive Officer, Center for Information Resilience at United Kingdom. My name is Lyubov Tsibulska. I am a moderator of this discussion. We have 45 minutes, not that much. So my guess is that we will have kind of two rounds, maybe one round of questions, and then we will move to your questions. Let's have Q&A. So I encourage you to be curious, and I encourage our gentlemen to be interesting. So let's start with Roman. You represent media, and we know that media have been under pressure for years and years, losing audiences to social media platforms, and it's especially relevant for Ukraine because we know that according to many polls, majority of Ukrainians consider Telegram the main source of information, which is of course very threatening. But AI seems to be changing the game again. So let me ask you directly, what does disinformation, it's not very fashionable, honestly, word these days, disinformation, let's call it malign information, look like from inside the media, and what worries you the most with regard to AI right now?
Thank you very much, and guten Tag, guten Morgen from Germany. What worries me is that we have an elephant and we don't know what it looks like. We can only see part of a problem. It's an enemy that is hiding in the shadows. And the new technology that you've mentioned, the artificial intelligence, is something that we are learning to deal with, but we don't know how at the moment. Let me give you an example. I have a relative here in Ukraine, an older man in his late 60s, and he's sending me posts or reels from Facebook every day. And I can see that some of them are from artificial intelligence, showing Ukrainian women saying something bad about the Ukrainian government. But he cannot understand that it's artificial, it's fake, it's propaganda. And this is, for me, is the key problem, the older people, because we can do education at schools, we can show the problem, we can make people sensitive, but we don't have the answer what to do with the older generation. And these are people who go to the polls at elections. We had elections last year in Germany to the Bundestag, and Russia was trying to influence it, and there was a relatively big campaign of the so-called shadow sites or sites that were actually trying to copy German media, like Der Spiegel or the rest, and just use false information. And the problem is, for me as well, we cannot really measure the influence of the disinformation. We can see it, we can say that it's there, but there is a problem with measuring the effect, if it influences people a lot or maybe not so as we think. And of course it's a topic, disinformation, misinformation, false information, that is all over the news, has been there for years. But on the other hand, we don't have really solutions. And the biggest problem, the biggest challenge for me also as a journalist is the balance between fighting disinformation and preserving freedom of press, freedom of speech. For Germany, it's a special case because German laws are very, very liberal because of the German history, because the Nazis closed all the papers and so on and so forth. So that's why it is more difficult in Germany to fight disinformation. And later, when I have a chance to talk about German media and artificial intelligence, there was a very prominent example just a few weeks ago with the television channel ZDF, when they broadcast a news piece using artificial intelligence there, and it is not allowed according to the standards of that TV channel. And that was a big news in Germany, because for the first time artificial intelligence somehow managed to get into the main television news on a national channel. There were the reporter who did that was removed, so it had big waves. On the other hand, you know, summing up, I would say that you've mentioned that it's a challenge. Of course it is, but on the other hand, we lost our monopoly on information, which is okay. It will never be the same to the social media. But on the other hand, I think disinformation and artificial intelligence may lead to that people will have more trust to the classic media. So I think it will return.
Those people who have critical thinking, of course. Thank you for this. Thank you, and let's move to how governments see it. And now I will switch to Ukrainian language, and I will ask Andriy Kovalenko. Дякую, що ви з нами.
Thank you for being with us, Andriy. You represent Center of Counter and Disinformation at the National Defense and Security Council. Your center was set up a year before full-scale invasion, and at the very beginning, at the outset, you were in the center of all these disinformation attacks. tell us how the state approaches change, approaches of the state. If we can say this, because currently at the moment you are the only big center engaged into countering disinformation, not strategic communication, but countering Russian disinformation. How the approaches change? What would be your forecast where we're moving to? Thank you. I will start with saying that one of the functions of the center is to coordinate. We cooperate with special services, including intelligence, in order not only to counter, but also be proactive and make an impact on the enemy. That is creation of information attacks against the enemy on different topics. About countering, the major problem in Ukraine today is the absence of clear-cut legislation which would streamline the definition, what the disinformation is, how is it present in media or information space, which would allow the state to act more rapidly. Why there is no such thing? We have discussed this with the members of parliament. There might be a sort of a law, but the functions are going to be identified in terms of countering extremism, because the major threat is when people are recruited through Telegram in order to commit clandestine activities. And there are no members of parliament currently here. I would like to ask them, but anyway, in 2024, when I became the head of our center, we started working with platform, with the Meta office, with TikTok office, with YouTube, in order to speed up blocking of destructive content and adapt AI instruments which exist in TikTok in particular.
Such as she content, as well as Russian propaganda with links to hashtag, in particular related to mobilization. Plus the sanction mechanism. We worked directly with the representative of the president and the security service of Ukraine to make sure that people such as Alexei Arestovich and other bloggers who left Ukraine and who work in a destructive way for Ukrainian information space, the sanction mechanism gives an opportunity for the state to require a platform to block their content. YouTube and TikTok have their own policies, but they don't operate under martial law. Therefore, you have to prove that this person is violating their policies or legislation. Then they would limit that. On the one hand, this is good because the state could move toward digital dictatorship, because it might lead to negative consequences. Sounds threatening, digital dictatorship. Well, I'm against that, of course. Instead of limitations, I think I prefer dialogue. However, with bloggers and people who work for Russia, including intelligence organs of Russia, the only thing we can do is to block the information resources. Okay, which platforms do you enjoy good dialogue? You mentioned Meta, but the biggest concern is Telegram, TikTok, any others? Well, you see, with TikTok, strange as it might seem to many of you, it's the best progress. We were able to block a page which was created by the Russia. They were using she content, and the video was blocked. Meta takes much longer. With X, last year, when a number of pages by Russians was created, we found this out from our intelligence agency. They used personalities such as Worker Trump, and they would spread the Russian content. There was no direct reaction, but Michael was able to post on WhatsApp some evidence, and that was blocked. I must ask you about Telegram. I have to ask you. Well, there are methods that we use to put pressure and destroy some content. We use some methods in digital space, but this is not done through dialogue. No. There's no dialogue at all. Therefore, any attempt for dialogue, Durov received and perceived as an ultimatum. After that, some bots were removed who worked for TOT and that were useful for our intelligence services. They were restored, but Durov basically sent this is in doing so, he sent this signal out, implying that they should never put any more pressure on him. Okay, my comment is that the problem with Telegram, we see that we have enough evidence that Telegram is dangerous because content is not verified, and they perceive Telegram as media. Often it's anonymous, but they also recruiting people for money to do certain tasks, including murders, arson, and we know that Telegram is dangerous. Having said that, Ukrainian state doesn't seem to be prepared to do anything about it. In the past, a wrong decision was made, and Vkontakte was banned because it was under control of FSB. But Russians found other means and interventions, and they found new access to Ukrainian audience. So now, when we ask the question why we're not doing anything about it, why we're not blocking it, we basically are facing the brick wall. And Ukrainian government is also using Telegram. That's why they do not find it in their interests to close Telegram. But when people ask why you're not banning Telegram, they say, but we're not Russians.
Again, and you know social media very well from inside. You have repeatedly helped us not to be banned by Facebook. You save us quite often. We know your contact, and once something happens, once our page is under threat, we go to you. You understand how they work. According to researchers, and I read this article, I think, in Guardian, according to researchers, 20% of all YouTube content is AI slop. So low quality, artificial intelligence content, and the algorithms works the way that you kind of see it more and more, revenue and like the it's a very good business. The revenue, if I'm not mistaken, every year from this AI slop is more than $100 million. And my question to you is, how do you see how social media counter AI disinformation? What is the strategy? Do they have strategy? What companies do have? What companies are still dragging behind, do not understanding the threat?
Oh, it's a very good question. Good morning. Maybe I will try to continue which my colleague told about platforms. Platforms use their own rules mainly. Rules based on the imagination of the world. Let's say their protection, their business against any sort of court cases, especially in US. We know that US is a country of the court cases. Secondly, it's some UN standards like Rabat Plan against hate speech, for example, and some international regulation and some regional regulation. And this forms these community standards or community guidelines on different platforms, different names, but they intend similar. They prohibit some type of content. It's, for example, terrorist content or protection of minors and so on and so on. But we must always remember that in 1996, US passed amendments to their legislation, which state that this is internet intermediaries. In European Union, they also called online platforms in Digital Services Act against the internet intermediaries. The main difference, they are not media. They have no editorial control. And this is very important. When we demand something from platforms, we forgot that they present themselves and trying to protect this role, that we are not content creator. We just allow all of you to post something. And this is maybe the biggest problem that we have now, that we see a huge amount of disinformation, and not only Russian, sorry, but on Ukrainian, Polish side, in TikTok, I see every day a lot of videos hateful against Ukrainians. And this will be increased because next year in Poland will be elections. And we see also a lot of videos against TCK in Ukraine. Just scrolling TikTok this morning, and I saw a lot of them. Some of them AI made, but some of them are real. It's just malinformation. It's just repackaged some video content in the point they want to represent, and this is the problem. And the problem when we're talking about disinformation, we're talking about platforms that, yes, we're trying to cooperate. We also have now, let's say, onboarded on TikTok. We already have 2 platforms. I have 2 channels with Meta. One, it's Threats Exchange. It's reporting scam and all fraud activities. And let's say that disinformation always combined with fraud activity. For example, scamming profiles, trying to steal money, phishing of the pages, phishing profiles. It's in parallel all these years of full-scale invasion. I see it I help a lot. I can't help business, unfortunately, but to public officials, to important institutions, we're trying to cooperate, of course. But at the same time, I see a lot of content, and when I'm trying to report, for example, profile on Facebook with all this artificial Sora-made soldiers on the front line, which saying that this is war for money and blah, 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 Meta says we checked with our AI instrument and we can prove that this is AI. And that's the case. We now on the stage when we have a lot of well-quality AI product, which we sometimes can define which is AI or not. And that's the case. That instruments are too cheap and too well quality, well produced, then sometimes you need to see artificials like something bad text, or for example, I had one video when railroad and the electrical equipment staying on the road. You understand that this is a mistake. But in general, it's very difficult to find that this is AI. And that's the case. And I can say that when we're trying to think about combating disinformation, we need to maybe roll back and thinking we can beat all viruses in the world. It's not possible because they are developing as we, as human, as any any animal, any mushroom, and so on. But we're trying to protect ourselves to make vaccination, make other sport, and so on and so on. With disinformation, we need to think about this. We can't combat all this because when we will have combination AI with quantum computers, it will be much more terrible than we have now. This situation now is terrible, frankly speaking.
Okay, give us a picture. What is coming?
I think that we will have so well-produced videos that we will have no instrument to prove. And any elections will be under the threat. Elections now under the threat. We see case of Romania. We see case attempts in Moldova. We will see what will go in Hungary already. We will see Poland. And frankly speaking, elections will be one of the most attacked by disinformation, first of all. Of course, in Ukraine, we have mobilization. It's also attacked. Zelensky now attacked also. I see a lot of videos against Zelensky. Oh, anti-Semitism. We have now a law combating anti-Semitism, and we have already a lot of videos saying that this is a Jews' power, world power that will try to clear Ukrainian nation.
So, but this is the problem. This is how we see it. But what is the solution?
Solution, there is no clear solution and no one-way solution. Yes, we need to cooperate with platform, but we also need to think how to educate people, starting from the Finnish people starting to work with 6 months toddlers, because there is no other way. Technology will increase. The quality of these products will increase. And if you try only to prohibit, it's very short.
Digital dictatorship, we know how to call it.
Prohibition, it's only short, let's say we will try to make a short step to prohibit something because we understand that the threat is very high. But in long term, it's not working. Because there will be Telegram, we will see some other platforms could raise, and what we will do with them. Telegram is a very bad case. It shows that it could be platforms without regulation. When you have no regulation, everyone can do everything. And Telegram is a very great example. If you have no regulation, if you have no jurisdiction, one's the problem in Ukraine, why we have no law. Because, yes, we can pass law. I wrote laws, law on media, I co-author of the law, and so on. But if you have no jurisdiction, so what?
So if Ukrainian government comes to you and asks, Ihor, what should we do with Telegram? What would be your response?
With Telegram, I could say that, short, of course, we need to prohibit them. I'm support this prohibition of Telegram. It's very important because it's about cognitive warfare. It's not only about disinformation. It's about technological attacks, scam, and so on, misrepresentation, which is very popular now on every platform. Again, recently I deleted, for example, clones of representative of Ombudsman of Ukraine and Poland. There was 3 clones on Facebook. Absolutely identical. The only difference that some piece of content, specific content, will added to regular content, just copied from the original place. And this is a strategy which is used now not only by Russians. Again, in Poland, I deleted clones of Miroslava Kedek, head of Ukrainian House in Warsaw, with AI-generated deepfakes when she spread in brackets, spread some hateful content against Polish people. And that's why we need to combine different techniques. There is no one technique. We need to combine education. We need to combine some legal instruments to find, for example, these bloggers. And yes, I absolutely agree, we need to use sanctions. We need to collaborate with platforms, and we need to talk maybe with US.
When you say we, what do you mean? We as governments?
We as a state, we as NGOs, of course. It's again, we are in the same boat. There is no difference between state and the NGO sector now because we absolutely cooperate with security service, of course, because we all understand that the threat is too high, unfortunately.
Thank you. Let's move on, and I'm moving to Adam. Adam, what emerging risks related to AI and information integrity do you think are still underestimated and not yet widely discussed?
Thank you. Good morning. So the main problem, as we see it from AI coming down the track to hit us next, is the fact that we are building the training data for the next generation of attack. CIR works in open source intelligence. Every piece of OSINT that we produce, every Bellingcat methodology guide, every article by Deutsche Welle, it's ingested by the same AI systems used by the adversary. So we are literally providing the training data for the next generation of attack. The open source community has spent a decade building public methodologies, how we structure reporting, how we source material, the language around uncertainty. And it's been really useful. It's built trust, a lot of trust actually, and it's been used in pre-bunking, it's been used in fact-checking and many other techniques. That's now all training data to the enemy. The signs of trustworthiness are learnable patterns, which means they're reproducible. We will shortly encounter entirely synthetic investigations that look like Bellingcat or CIR or Deutsche Welle reporting, but they will have fabricated source change, probably real locations, but with fabricated events, and with specific hedging language that reads as credible, all false. So that's the AI threat that concerns me the most. One of the best tools in our arsenal is about to become undermined. So what can we do about it? Well, watermarking is unreliable. Detection tools, losing an arms race. Reputation and method used to be a strong defense, but they are both about to become clonable. So as much as we have built the counter-disinformation infrastructure, we've also built the manual on how to attack it. All's not lost. I know I sound negative, but we see this as a huge threat coming down the line. We have had some success attacking the infrastructure around those organizations conducting hostile influence activity. I can't speak to it more here in an open forum, but if you follow our series of reports on the A7 networks around the world, you'll get a good idea of what I'm talking about. And over the last few years, we have taken billions of dollars away from those organizations that are using hostile influence activities to undermine our various states. What else really helps, frankly, is conferences like this. We get to meet other organizations and people who are working on the same problem set. We can swap tips, ideas, thoughts, methodologies. It's been very useful. And actually, I'll take the opportunity to have an open plea. If anyone wants to cooperate or collaborate with CIR, we're very welcome. If we can help you, fine. If you can help us, even better. But we're open. And I guess the last point I'd like to make, and I think this is where the rest of the countries affected by our common enemy could take a leaf out of Ukraine's book. We call a lot of these hostile influence activities, this disinformation, this malign information, we call it grey zone activity. We call it activity below the threshold of response. But this is our definition. We decide it's below the threshold of response. Ukraine hasn't. Ukraine has responded very well and very aggressively. And I think it's maybe time for the other countries in the wider alliance network to do the same thing. Thank you.
Absolutely. And with this regard, I just want to remind everyone that just a few years ago, when the full-scale invasion started, we were almost prohibited to do deep strikes because of fear of escalation. And now we do it, and we see how it changes the game completely. And the same with information operations. We were not, it was like very important to do defensive stuff, but not offensive. But now Ukrainians are doing offensive operations, informational and offensive operations. And it's again changing the game. Just one small question. Your organization operate in 78 countries, if I'm not mistaken, and give us kind of a understanding how it looks like from this, vantage point. Are we facing the one global information war, or these are, separate ones?
What a question. Yeah, we are operating in 78 countries. I would say that the war in Ukraine, both in a physical and information sense, is a laboratory. People are learning how to fight it as we go. I think that Ukraine is trying to pass on some of those lessons to its allies. Obviously, Russia has the advantage. It can replicate its knowledge around the world, and it is doing so. It is absolutely doing so. better than we are learning amongst ourselves, despite wonderful conferences like this. I would say the big impact for AI, for us at least, is I'm old enough to remember when information operations would take 50 people 6 or 7 months. You'd have writers and script editors and cartoonists and all sorts. That's now 3 people in 4 days can do the same thing. So the barrier has dropped to the extent that the adversary is able to project that capability into many other countries at low cost, to the point where they can exhaust the defenses. So I would say that our global view is as intense as the information warfare, the cognitive warfare is here in Ukraine. A similar version to that, at least the lessons drawn from that, are being deployed by Russia globally, particularly in the non-aligned world, but all around the world, to pursue a number of diplomatic, national security, and frankly, financial ends. So they are learning the lessons better than we are, despite the fact that we have in Ukraine the ultimate example of, frankly, what you can do if you have the authority and permissions to respond.
Thank you so much. We have 7 minutes left, and I promised you to give you opportunity to ask questions. So do we have questions? Please, Olena.
Good morning, Olena Konopla, communications expert. I know that all categories of people are vulnerable to disinformation and manipulations, but I wanted to ask you about young people, about teenagers. What do you think? If you can respond to this question. Which countries have been the most successful, and thanks to which methods, to preserve their young people to defend their young people against disinformation and manipulative operations? In Ukraine, it is very acute because Russia is recruiting as many young people and teenagers through social networks and social platforms like Telegram for very shameful actions like burning vehicles and other provocative activities. And some countries have implemented prohibitions for teenagers and children to use social networks. Some countries are using education and awareness activities at schools. Or YouTube has this, YouTube Kids has these limitations so the children cannot view certain content. So which methodology do you consider to be the best, to be the most effective, and which countries have been the most successful? So perhaps it is to Ihor, or perhaps Adam and some other speakers can respond as well. Well, Adam obviously has more expertise, and let me give you a very simple example why I'm skeptical about prohibitions. So for pornography, we have this prohibition until 18 years of age, and I was able to view it at 13. So any prohibition for teenagers, and teenagers are prone to protest as they are, so we need to have a psychologist here to show the way it works. But when you prohibit a teenager to do something, it is great for the providers of that content. So prohibitions alone will not be able to tackle this problem. Finland would be a classic example, because in Finland, I was amazed back in 2017 when the Finnish people told me about the experience they had. They were working on it very profoundly back then, but copying that experience, it will not be simple, because you all have our own cultural codes, and certain things may work in Nordic countries and they're more calm and more placid and more balanced, or perhaps they are more loners, but Ukrainians have a different psychological type. We're not better or worse, we are simply different. So for Ukraine, we need to look for our own way, but perhaps the Russians have hacked us very effectively. When I see Russian-speaking teenagers in Kyiv, it is a major trigger to me. So thank you for your response. Thank you for your response. Дуже коротко, дуже коротко. Ну, це не якась окрема річ, це багато різних речей. Коли росіяни використовують для підлітків, для телеграм, вони залишають цифрові свідчення цього. І можна це знайти, можна це зупинити. І можна також використовувати їхні власні вразливості. І фінська модель дуже ефективна. Якщо все це комплексно об'єднати, це ваш захист.
Доброго ранку, дякую за цікаву.
Thank you for this very exciting panel. I'm Andriy Teteruk, and I completely share the opinion that the Russian Federation is trying to undermine Ukrainian resistance and the front lines through information tools to distort the conscience of Ukrainians and their mentality. So we would not keep our victory in the focus of our attention. And they're all using those tools like Telegram, and they're influencing in a negative way the conscience of Ukrainians. And the bloggers who went to other countries, they have also been destructive, and we completely understand this destructive impact on behalf of the Russian Federation. But how do we feel about the fact that Ukrainian bloggers are using the same models, are using the same toolkits, and they have complete support from Ukrainian government? So they're getting military deferments, they are not paying taxes for their revenues. So that is an internal enemy. And what sort of solutions do we need to develop to prevent using the same toolkits that are being used by the enemy, but we still remain Ukrainians and we want to win this war, but we're using the same. So it is a question to Andriy Kovalenko, but perhaps everybody else can respond as well. Thank you for your question. And you have Mykola Kняжицький sitting next to you. It was an honor to launch Espresso together with you. And we have this draft lore. In the media, it is called the Telegram draft lore, but it is more extensive. It is about uncovering the true owners of these media outlets, I believe it is very useful and it is very just. So we can vet some of the anonymous sources we do not need, anonymity which we should not have. As far as bloggers are concerned, I'm not going to comment on taxes. It is not something that is within my purview. We have law enforcement agencies, the same with military deferments. But as far as using methodologies and toolkits is concerned, we do have to use the methodologies that mirror Russia's activities, using the resources that in one way or another have been related to Pavlo Durov, for instance, and Durov is Russian. And at some time ago, there's been a lot of very exciting events by using this particular tool in the information environment against Russia. And while the war is ongoing, these hybrid methodologies against the enemy, for our own part, I believe they are quite permissible. So thank you very much.